So first of all, let's go ahead and bring this meeting to order. And let's see, a special meeting of the City Council for interviews for our Planning Commission. And if we could do a roll call, please, Regina.
Councilmember Borelli.
Here.
Councilmember No.
Here.
Councilmember Zaragoza.
Here.
Vice Mayor Taylor.
Here.
Mayor Thomas.
I am here. All right. And we have no announcements to the public. And if I could get a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. And first of all, I'd like to note that we do not have any public comment related to open non-agendized items. However, we will have public comment at the end of this prior to us going into our voting process. So just for public information.
Move for adoption.
Yes. I'm sorry, what was that, Patty?
Move for adoption.
All right. And second?
Second.
All right, moving on. Discussion and action items. First of all, the city received 4 applications for appointment to the Planning Commission before the final filing date on February 12th. Each applicant met the qualifications required by the City Code of Section 2.23. The following candidates are Theodore Juba, Michael Friend, Nicole Gottberg, and Barbara Rains. First of all, I would like to thank each and every one of you, and I'm looking at each and every one of you on my screen here, though you can't tell, which kind of makes this, this is one of the things that we don't like about the Zoom calls, but we're going to make the best of it here tonight and do what we can. So I wanted to thank each and every one of you. I know that for those that have been serving, you know how much time it takes, and those that are considering serving, hopefully you understand the endeavor that you're undertaking and the time that it will take. And with that from the City Council, I would like to express my appreciation for you taking the time to really invest in our city and consider this idea of supporting our community through the Planning Commission. I was a planning commissioner once. I know Michael Zaragoza was a planning commissioner once, and I don't know if Patty Borelli was. Were you ever on planning commission? Nope. No. And so we are, we've sat in your seats. We know where you're coming from. We know where you might be going. And again, we truly appreciate the time that you are taking tonight and considering for the future. So with that, the interviews are conducted in a public interview process with questions posed to each candidate by the City Council. Each council member will rotate asking you questions. And then I will also, as we go through the questions, we will rotate who starts the question first. So we'll be starting off with one person. The next time we'll be starting off with number 2, and the next time we'll start off number 3. So all of you have the chance to answer a question for the first time. And we will have, I think it's going to be right around 9 or 10 questions that we will have for each one of you to answer. And as well, we will have a 3-minute time limit. Now, that doesn't mean you have to take up all 3 minutes, and I won't cut you off at the very last second and ask you to finish, but I would ask you to at least respect the timing. Some of these can be a little more in-depth answers, so we expect those to fill up the full time, and some are just, some very simple questions to answer. So all those we will be switching off between us. Let's see, I'm going through my notes here. So as we get to the end, just for when I'll address this again, we will go to public comment, and then we'll go to a voting process where we'll vote privately, and then we will announce out the votes and who voted, who made which votes. And so we will be emailing them into our city clerk, and she and Cleve will review the votes and report out as to what the votes were. And we'll continue voting until we have 2 people that have received at least 3 votes in their favor. And from there, and we'll go over that again. I just want to give everybody kind of an idea, and our audience a kind of idea of where we're going today. Have I missed anything in this process? Yes, Regina.
Mr. Mayor, I do want to just ask the candidates if they wouldn't mind, if it's not their turn answering a question, if they could just turn their video off so we could focus on the candidate that's answering that question.
Oh, boy. Let's see if I can figure this out.
So you'll see stop video at the bottom. You just click
Okay.
on stop video and make sure that you're muted.
You don't know how much of a Luddite I am.
So Regina, would you clarify? In other words, if you were interviewing Theodore, you'd want all the rest of us to hit the stop video arrow.
That's right.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
Theodore won't be getting all the questions asked, you know, one after the other. We're all going to kind of rotate through. So it'll be, you'll have to kind of stay on top of your video there.
Okay,
If that makes
now
sense.
that I know where it is, I couldn't find it until, thank you.
Sure.
All right, and I will be in my list that I have randomly selected is the order in the questions will be Barbara, it'll be Ted, and then Michael, and then Nicole. So you can kind of get an idea of the order as we go through this. All right. All right, and so I am going to, Cleve, did you have anything else to add to the process before I get started?
No, I think you've covered it all, Mayor, and just so the applicants know, if your video is left on, we can turn it off from here too, and we'll let you back in when you need to be. So we just think that would be a fair way to do it for everyone, so they can focus on the person that's answering the question. So anyway, just for your information. So
Thank you, Cleve. And Michael?
Just a point of order, Mayor. I know we took a first and second, but did we actually adopt the agenda as a acclamation?
So you're gonna get picky, huh? All right, you know, I appreciate that.
Just in case somebody says something later.
As long as I don't have to say all that over again, we'll roll back to the agenda. Yes. Could I get a roll call for the agenda, please?
Great idea. Councilmember Borelli,
Aye.
Councilmember No,
Aye.
Councilmember Zaragoza,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Taylor,
Aye.
Mayor Thomas.
Aye. So that was my way of helping everybody feel a little more comfortable in this process. All right.
Dennis?
Uh-oh. Yes.
No, no,
Okay.
it's okay.
Good.
Would you just repeat the order that you're going to ask the applicants? You said
Yes. Okay. The
Barbara.
first applicant that I'm going to ask the first question will be Barbara
Okay,
as first, and then we'll roll through Barbara, Ted, Michael, and Nicole.
thank you.
All right. All right. So the first question is going to be for the first person is going to be to Barbara. And so Barbara, tell us about your interest in serving on the city council, city planning commission, and how your past job experience, education, and personal interests better qualifies you to serve in this capacity.
Well, first of all, I've lived in Placerville for 44 years, and I spent more time here than I have in the city I was born in. I did work for building and safety in the city of Los Angeles, so I have a whole bunch of information on building codes from that experience. And then I went to work for planning and safety in Fresno, and again, I learned more about building codes and plan. I was even on the planning commission for the city of Fresno. So that's my background. I'm a retired psychology professor at Folsom Lake College. I worked there for 40 years and retired when I turned 75. I care deeply about Placerville. I care about its history. If I wasn't teaching psychology, I'd be teaching history. I also am a docent at the museum. And sometimes when I'm called, I also go out to Marshall State Park. So I care deeply about the city of Placerville, its integrity, its history, its ability to balance the old with the new. I'm watching what you're doing in the old city in the Ketchup building right now. I think that bringing that experience to the forefront, I have no intentions of applying for the city council in the future. I like the planning commission. I've never been so obvious of roofs and building doorways and windows since I've been on this commission. when I'm driving around town. I look at roofs, I look at windows, I look at doors, you know, so it does expose you to construction.
All right. Thank you very much, Barbara. And let's move on to Theodore. Would you like to be called Theodore or Ted?
You can call me Ted.
All right. Let's go. Ted, would you like me to repeat the question for you?
Sure, that'd be helpful.
If you could tell us about your interest in serving on the City Planning Commission and how your past job experience, education, and personal interest better qualifies you to serve in this capacity.
That's a good question. So past experience, I've briefly been a planning commissioner for the city of Placerville in the past. I presently work in the technology industry, and by virtue of that, I'm seeing how the business sector is changing in response to COVID-19. A lot of jobs are going remote now, and that has real consequences for city planning, because a lot of people in high-paying jobs generally have more availability to live outside of cities. And I would imagine many of them are moving to Placerville. I mean, I've lived here since, but I'm seeing how it works as somebody in the technology industry, as a manager. Education-wise, I have a degree in mathematics, which doesn't really qualify me for much in terms of city planning, but you know, I can read a schematic pretty well. But I would say beyond that, I'm really just interested in seeing this community hold on to its heritage while also becoming a better and more inviting place. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ted. Michael Friend, I'll go ahead and repeat the question for you.
Let me see. I'm trying to turn on my video.
All right.
Start my video. There we go. I told you I was a Luddite. I'm going to rely.
Nicely done.
Cleve, I might rely on you to do it for me.
Fortunately, you're not applying for our IT job.
No.
Okay, good. All right. So Michael, tell us about your interest in serving and continuing to serve on the City Planning Commission, and how your past job experience, education, and personal interests better qualify you to continue serving in this capacity.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. And I'm really, really happy to be here to apply again for this position. I have enjoyed serving as a planning commissioner these past many years. Mr. Mayor and Mr. Saragosa, I think we all served together at one point or the other, and it's been incredibly fulfilling. I've had a lot of fulfilling occupations in my life. I was a paramedic for many, many years, including the firefighter paramedic in Placerville. I presently manage all of the major medical teams that are responding throughout the state to COVID and to wildfires and other disasters in the state, and that's incredibly fulfilling. And serving as a planning commissioner is fulfilling at somewhat of a different level. I have to say I'm totally envious of Barbara, because if I were retired, I would be engaged in the historic society and be a docent and those other things, and really just out of a love for Placerville. I came to Placerville. The first time was probably in 1970 or 72 on a family vacation. And then I've been living in the county since the early 80s and in Placerville since the mid 90s approximately. And it's just a wonderful and unique town. And one of the reasons that the drivers for me to stay engaged is because as the Sacramento region, to me, this is just me personally, as the Sacramento region grows, the pressure I think will also grow for us to try to retain our unique identity and our historical context. And so if I can contribute to that and help out, that I can give something back. And well, thank you for the opportunity.
All right, thank you, Michael. All right, I'll go ahead and repeat the question for Nicole. There you are. The magic of this Zoom meeting, huh? All right, Nicole, tell us about your interest in serving on the City Planning Commission and how your past job experience, education, and personal interests better qualify you to serve in this capacity.
Yeah, so I'm interested in serving on the commission. You know, service to community is kind of a core value for me. I grew up in a military family. My background is as a geologist doing environmental consulting work. So I work on environmental impact reports. I'm super familiar with CEQA, slope stability analyses, and sort of various construction projects that I've worked on from like the development side. I've also worked on a fair amount of environmental litigation work as well as part of my career. And then also some of my other experiences with Habitat for Humanity, as well as rebuilding Sacramento. I've worked on a number of different construction projects using different building styles, including, you know, wood, stone buildings, brick, etc. So I have kind of that experience as well, which I think is kind of a unique background to have on both the construction side as well as sort of the environmental side of understanding the impacts to the environment, which is what I do for my job. And then I guess just a little bit more, you know, I do a lot of consulting work for various government agencies in California currently. And I think it'd be kind of an interesting experience to serve on a planning commission. I'm in my 30s. I settled down here. I mean, I grew up in a military family where I moved around all the time. I plan to spend the rest of my life here. I have no intention of moving again, and I'm super invested in the future of our community.
Thank you very much. And so our next question, we're going to move on, and Councilman or Vice Mayor Taylor will be asking question number 2 and starting with Ted.
All right.
All right. Please explain your understanding of the relationship between Planning Commissioner and the applicant.
That's a really good question. I would say that the Planning Commissioner has a goal of helping the applicant. I think both parties generally want the same thing, which is something improved, something better about the city. However, the applicant has to abide by all the city's rules, and the planning commissioner, it's their job to both interpret those rules where there's room for interpretation, and to weigh the interest of other members of the community who are also tentatively affected by the change, and consider public comment and seek, I guess, consensus with the rest of the commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Next is Michael Friend.
So thank you for the question. I believe the relationship between the planning commissioner, and the applicant has to be one certainly of neutrality, and with a commitment to be honest and to have integrity in your decision making. You need to review each project on its merits. You can certainly facilitate by means of offering suggestions or directing to staff. You should be clear in your reasoning as to why you support or do not support a project. You're not an advocate for the applicant, however. And I think it's important for the applicant to understand that. Generally, I don't engage applicants in questions. I can probably count on one hand the number of times I may have had, I believe it's called an ex parte communication, where I wanted a specific piece of information. And I've always advised staff that I've done that. But I really want, the applicant should know that we're neither an adversary nor an advocate, that we're neutral, we're honest and fair, and that our decisions are defensible. And that's not just to the applicant themselves. I think that's also to the broader community at the end of the day. And I think we've had a number, recently 3 appeals, I think, within the last year or so, that it's just really important that the Planning Commission can demonstrate defensibility in the decisions they make. So I think we need to be, the applicant should expect that we would be educated as to their project, educated as to zoning applications, and also community sensitivity. So thank you.
Carrie, you're muted.
It gets me every time. All right. Thank you, Michael. Next up is Nicole. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
All right. Please explain your understanding of the relationship between Planning Commissioner and the applicant.
Yes, I mean, I think the Planning Commissioner's role is really to remain unbiased and impartial and look at every application equally and fairly in comparison to, our general plan and our ordinances, applicability with that and with intent. I mean, I think one of the things is that we get into a lot of it's discretionary. That's why it's going in front of the Planning Commission. But really looking at what was the intent of our general plan, what was the intent of our ordinances in those cases. I think it's really important not to have any sort of conflict of interest or bias or ex parte communications, maybe some limited circumstances like a site visit, but not to ask any leading questions that would sort of implicate that you're standing on a project before a public hearing. I think that's kind of a critical relationship with an applicant, to kind of be clear that they don't feel like you're leaning one way or another going into the public hearing process.
All right, thank you. And next is Barbara Rains.
There we go. I think that the relationship between the applicant and the Planning Commission is one of fairness and listening. The applicant has brought a petition before the Planning Commission, and it's our responsibility to do our job and read the reports on what they want and to understand all the building codes and all the issues. Quite frequently, I have gone by that building site so that I can have a visual, not just the written material, but I can actually see what they want and what they want to do so that I feel more informed. My job is to represent the city of Placerville and the citizens of Placerville and to be neutral. There is never any personal, anything to be gained personally from each candidate, but to take into consideration the needs of the applicant, what they want, how that will align with the needs of the city and the future, recognizing our historical context as well as our future needs and goals, and to be as fair as I can. That's about as succinct as I can be.
All right, thank you.
All right, moving on. Let's see, we have Patty is going to ask our next question. And Patty, I'm going to go ahead and let you move from person to person. And I believe you are starting with Michael Friend.
Okay, Michael, please briefly describe what are the city's general plan, the city's zoning ordinance, and the development guide, and describe the role of these in the commissioner's decision-making process when reviewing the development application.
Yes, thank you. So I think to be succinct about this, the general plan is just that. It's general and very, very broad. It sets forth the city's intents, its plans, its vision, generally on a 20-year cycle. Where do we want to go? What do we think we need to do to accomplish that? The broad framework that the city wants to have. And we take a project and we look at it and we see, okay, so how does this project actually really fit in, or the word comply may not be the right word, but is it consistent with the general plan in terms of what the applicant wants to do? A lot more specific probably, or applicable probably for a commercial development than for the single family residential, but certainly that's not exclusive. Then the zoning ordinance really starts to get down into what the permissions are or the restrictions are. And so the zoning, you cannot put, you know, a shopping mall in R1 zoning, for example, just to give you a gross example. So those rules are established to guide us in the general plan application. And then finally, the development guide really assists applicants and commissioners alike in helping to fine tune a project and to get those nuances, to draw on the city's heritage to establish, you know, a clear identity, or how do we maintain our historic context, and so on and so forth. Also, the planting guide is a component of that. The signage element is a component of that. So these three groups of documents all work in harmony to help guide both the applicant as well as the planning commission to see, is a project appropriate for the location, for the city itself, for the neighborhood, and so on and so forth.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Okay, Dennis, who's next? You're on mute.
Nicole is next.
Okay. Hey, Nicole. Please briefly describe what are the city's general plan, the city's zoning ordinance, and the development guide, and describe the role of these in the commission's decision-making process while reviewing development applications, or the development applicant.
Yeah, so I mean, the zoning ordinances are basically, you know, that's what you can do where. So it eliminates what you are allowed to do in various areas of the city. When it comes to the general plan, again, that sort of lays out the intent and the vision. It gives a lot of background on, you know, what people in the city thought when that plan was put into place. It gets updated. And it's really kind of where does the city see itself going? And so that obviously plays into kind of the decision making. And then the development guide is a guide that provides kind of various details of guidelines. Obviously, it's not law in and of itself, but guidelines of sort of how to implement and evaluate the applications that you see. So, I mean, I think there's a number of different things in there. I've read through it, but yeah, things like if you want to do landscaping on your property, gives kind of the guidelines on what types of trees might be applicable. You know, we want more drought tolerant species, that's in the general plan. That then gets applied in the development guide on sort of the list of species of vegetation. So yeah, that's my answer.
Thank you. Okay. Dennis, our next one is Barbara. You're on mute.
Correct, yes.
Okay, sorry.
That's all right.
Barbara,
There we go. Okay.
there you are. Okay, please briefly describe what are the city's general plan, the city's zoning ordinance, and the development guide, and describe the role of these in the commissioner's decision-making process when reviewing development applications?
Well, first of all, the Planning Commission represents the City Council, and our job is to advise them and be their right hand on these issues so that the information we give to them has been thoroughly researched and is honest and is forthright and will support the goals of the city of Placerville. The city of Placerville is restricted by zoning. We've got 3 residential areas historically that we have to be very, very careful about what goes in there and what is maintained. We need to cooperate with the goals and the desires of the city council who represents the citizens of Placerville. We have to abide, you know, we're stuck with rules from the city, the county, the state that we have to abide by because they're legal ordinances on residential areas and businesses and structures. And it's our job to do the best we can to follow those zoning or those rules and those commissions, and then support the applicant by advising them. Perhaps maybe they can bring their case back if they modify it according to code, and to also advise the city council what our position is and make sure that things are legal, and to deal with the public in a kind and courteous way. So we've got to do our research and be honest in supporting the applicant and representing the city council in each case.
Okay, thank you. Michael.
The next one is Ted.
Ted, I'm sorry, yeah. Sorry.
So
Ted, do you
I'm
want me
here.
to-
I'm here.
going last on this one.
Ted, do you want me to repeat the question?
No,
Okay.
I've got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Echoing the sentiments of what others have said, the general plan is a long-term vision, and this changes very slowly. The zoning ordinances effectively provide a roadmap for how to get there, how to implement that vision. And the development guide is sort of like an instruction manual for the people who are doing the work and playing within that that boundary set by the zoning laws and the general plan. I think it's also worth noting, and Barbara mentioned this as well, that there's a degree of state control when it comes to general plan and zoning laws. And I'm not entirely sure if there's state control when it comes to development guides, but that's also something to balance that is essentially outside of our hands, and outside of your hands as well as a city council developing the plan. But it is absolutely something to contend with and to be aware of.
Okay, thank you. Dennis?
Thank you.
Dennis, you're muted.
Holy care. So the next question will be asked by Council Member No, and she will be, oh dear, she will be starting with Nicole.
Great. An important goal of Placerville is the protection of its historical past and heritage. Do you see a conflict between protecting the city's historical character and economic development?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I mean, I think there are places where it could be competing. I do think that's possible. I mean, I think obviously our historical architecture and our history is a valuable resource to us. It's something that makes us a destination that people want to move to, that people want to come to, which drives our economy growth. But I do think there could be limitations that would prevent growth. I mean, I think there's also kind of the concept of private property rights. Obviously, if you're in a historic district, there's rules and regulations in place. And I think those are good. And I think everybody who lives there knows that or they should know that they're zoned in those areas. But I think if you start talking about our commercial districts like, Main Street, historic Main Street, which is not currently a historic district, yeah, I could see competing interests there. I think that's something to consider. I think it's in our general plan as something that would be considered, looking at that area as a historic district. But I also see that, making it so puts limitations on the property owners there of what they can do with their property. So yeah, that's my answer.
Great, thank you. Barbara, would you like me to repeat the question?
There we go. Oh, the host won't let me open my video. There we go. Okay. I'm sorry, Jackie, would you please repeat the question?
Absolutely. An important goal of Placerville is the protection of its historic past and heritage. Do you see a conflict between protecting the city's historical character and economic development?
Yes, there is a conflict because you want to maintain this historical district and its essence of the 49er minor, and yet we still have a need for housing, for jobs, which are economic issues. We still have a need to take the city's monies and fix the roads. And so there is what the city has monies and funds to do to maintain the city in its historical district, and yet not impinge on what owners want to do to improve their property or to improve their, I think it's the smartest thing I ever heard about sticking those restaurants in the middle of the street. Okay, where necessity creates the mother of invention. But there's always going to be a conflict between citizens who think one way and the city who thinks the other way. And you try to find an honest and fair balance and trust the information that is given to you by the planning department and the historical societies before you make decisions. But there will always be different viewpoints.
Thank you. Did you have something else, Barbara?
No?
Oh,
Want me to turn off?
Great, we'll move on to Ted.
So there's an interesting distinction here because when we talk about these historical areas and the guidelines for development thereof. As a matter of rule setting and accountability, I see that as more your job as the city council. I mean, the city council has done a great deal of work in laying out where the historical districts are and what are the restrictions surrounding development with that. And that absolutely should be something that is accountable to voters, not to an appointed commission. All that being said, yes, there certainly is a trade-off. I mean, just at the most basic level, it becomes more expensive to develop in a lot of these situations because there's existing structures that need to be retrofitted. I mean, you can't just go and bulldoze a building on Main Street and put up a stucco building. And there's aging infrastructure that we have to contend with in the city too, and that does have real consequences for our ability to develop. So I would say yes, it is a trade-off, but whose trade-off is it? It is. I want to be a little more. I want to be very specific about that, and then I think, by and large, that is the responsibility of the elected officials to make that determination. And at the points where there's a little less clarity on what the guidelines ought to be, then the planning commission certainly works to make a objective decision.
Great, thank you, Ted. We'll move on to Michael.
Thank you for the question. And I think as a planning commissioner in my years on the commission, this is one of the most difficult and one of the most important issues that we deal with. I originally applied to the Planning Commission when the Office Max sign went up. And I remember coming home on Highway 50 one night, and there was this big, gigantic Office Max, nothing against Office Max or the In-N-Out Burger, but there was just big, massive sign, this lit up sign that was greeting me on my entrance into Placerville. And I went, what is this? Right? And it didn't seem to fit in a discussion of historic past and character. It was certainly good economic development, but to me, that was a total clash. Then look at this, what I still hold out as the signature project, and that is the Home Depot. And if you look at the Home Depot and you just pull away the facade, it's just a Home Depot like you're going to find in Folsom or Rancho Cordova or anywhere else. But the treatment they did on the front and the incredible work they did with the creek and the landscaping made it an absolutely fantastic project for us. So the short answer to the question is yes, there is clearly there can be a conflict between wanting to promote economic development while maintaining our historical past and character. And the design guideline talks a lot about our historic context and a city's heritage to establish a clear identity. And I believe, and Ted, forgive me respectfully, sir, I do think it is the Planning Commission's guide to implement the general plan and the ordinance that the city may pass, but we are there to apply those, okay? A couple of other examples. The Sourdough and Company on Main Street, okay? We all know what there was, but I like that project still. I find that project, that company totally resonated with me with regards to their theme. I could see it totally tying in, supporting our maintaining or being compatible with our historic context and so on and so forth. So I think as planning commissioners, we need to weigh each project. I have no problem giving information to an applicant, that suggestions to an applicant. We can't compel an applicant. And because a project doesn't really look like the way we want it to and meet the historic component, we can't necessarily disapprove it on that. But getting back to one of the earlier questions about what our relationship with an applicant is, we can certainly help steer them and give them ideas so that the city can get what it wants, as well as the applicant getting what they want. It doesn't always happen. Let's look at oh God, I'm old, so I forget. Thompson's Toyota. Okay,
Michael, we're hitting up against your 3-minute mark.
Okay,
I'm happy to let you go ahead and finish your thought there.
On this Thompson's Toyota example, we had no choice in allowing them to redesign their dealership the way Toyota wanted them to, because if we hadn't, it would have been gone. So sometimes we're at the mercy. Thank you for allowing me to go over.
You bet. Thank you, Michael. All right, and now we're moving on to another question from our City Council member, Saragosa. And I believe you are starting with Barbara.
Yes. Okay. Good evening, Barbara.
Good evening.
What type of commercial and residential growth do you feel is compatible with our community?
I'm sorry, what type of?
Yes, I'll repeat it. What type of commercial and, excuse me, and residential growth do you feel is compatible with our community?
That's a good question. Well, most commercial facilities are downtown where people can park or people can walk and can get to them. Residential is further out in the more outlying areas. Like I live over by the town of Smith Flat. I no longer can walk into town, but the two are compatible, but the residential should be more outside and the commercial should be more, I believe, inside the city. We also need to have enough commercial so that people don't have to go out of town, that there's a gas stations and there's grocery stores and there's facilities that they can stay in their hometown and give us those taxes. Okay. So I don't know whether that answers your question, but I think that one is closer to downtown and one is sprawls a little bit more out.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. All right, Ted, you're next. And I'll repeat the question. What type of commercial and residential growth do you feel is compatible with our community?
I think when we look at Main Street, retail is a big part of our city. It brings in a lot of revenue from out of the city, which is fantastic, and it's essentially what gives our downtown its character. That's why people walk around, because there's great retail down there. So I certainly think that retail is very, very important. Sort of office type industrial, also, provided that it's done tastefully within our I guess guidelines for preserving the historic character. And heavier industrial, that's certainly harder to conform to our historical guidelines. And we still have those industries that there's just not front and center on Main Street. When it comes to residential, I would say, mostly single family residential. That is a significant part of the character of the city, with some medium density housing where appropriate around the city. I don't see a rationale for putting a high density high rise in the city of Placerville.
All right. Thank you, Ted. All right, Michael, you're next.
Yes, thank you, Michael. I think that multi-use is really what is a good plan for us. We don't have a lot of land left here in the city. So by multi-use, I'm thinking of businesses on the ground floor and residential living space apartments and that sort of thing up top. And then that helps us to also meet some of our housing element, right? For lower income and less of the large expansive type homes. We have to maximize the land that we have left. They aren't mutually exclusive. They can be tied together. That's what we need to attract. I do agree that the farther out we go, the more industrial type activities, businesses, that is appropriate for them. I can look at, like, say, Placerville Drive. Part of me can see Placerville Drive as becoming a fairly, industrial is a dirty word sometimes, I think, but I can see it more of a shop oriented, Home Depot being an anchor tenant along that line. Broadway, looking at Broadway, what can we do at Broadway? We have a lot of the older fashioned strip malls. It was nice to see the remodeling to the Save Mart store. That was fantastic. And if we can figure out what to do in the upper end of Broadway with that old where the grocery outlet is, that could be a combination of businesses and housing there if we ever had an opportunity to do something with that, working with the landlord. But that's kind of the approach I think the city should pursue.
Great, thank you, Michael. Nicole, and I'll go ahead and repeat the question. What type of commercial and residential growth do you feel is compatible with our community?
Yeah, so I think growth, kind of mixed use growth, both in the Upper Broadway and Broadway areas, as well as Placerville Drive. I think we sort of need some more housing for, middle or lower income that can't necessarily afford a single family residence. And I think having businesses, offices, things like that, as well as retail in those areas would be a really nice use. I think I've seen other communities that have done that, and that's been super successful. And it doesn't really, I don't see that impeding on sort of the historic districts and the Main Street area. I think you can kind of have a mix in your community of both. I don't want high rises. I don't think anybody does. But I think, if you're looking at fourplexes or kind of smaller smaller residential facilities that are more than just a single family home. I think it's really important that we sort of maintain the areas that we already have that are, single family homes, that are these older homes. I think it's really important that we maintain Main Street. I do think that's a big tourist draw for us, and sort of mostly it's the retail. It's the unique art shops, one of a kind pieces you can't get anywhere else. It's the antique stores. It's things like that that bring people here. And so I wouldn't want to do anything to kind of impede on that. There might be some growth for, some apartments in existing buildings above shops. But I think that's more something to be done in kind of the Placerville Drive area and Broadway areas, but I would like to see it.
Great. Thank you, Nicole. Oh, Mr. Mayor, you're muted.
The joy of Zoom and the mute button. We and then trying to get all of our screens all working the right way. And I certainly feel for the applicants going through this process, as it is much more challenging than doing this in person. And I appreciate your patience with me, and likewise we certainly have patience with the challenges you have, and it's no reflection on your application, that's for certain. At this time, we had discussed as a council previous, we discussed having a break at this time. Is that something we still want to do? Do we want to go forward for a little more? Oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Jackie.
You have to have really good hearing to hear through
Yes.
that mute. Can we just have 2 minutes?
You actually will go with 4 minutes.
Wow, thank you. You're so
I'm
generous.
generous tonight. Okay, well, we're gonna hold here for a minute and come back in 4 minutes. All right, we'll see everybody in 4 minutes. Thank you. It looks like we have everybody back, and we're gonna continue on with our questions. And let's see, do we have all the participants back? Michael and Nicole, are you there?
I'm here, sir.
All right, and Nicole's here. Excellent. Thank you so much. And so we're going to move on to Kara is going to be asking you the next question, and she is going to be starting with Ted.
All right, and I'm not muted.
Well done.
Ted, this is a hypothetical scenario. The Planning Commission is considering a commercial development proposal that is clearly consistent with the general plan, zoning ordinance, and development guidelines. However, the project is strongly opposed by the public. How do you resolve this conflict between the project's compatibility with established city land use policies and guidelines, and with the public's negative perception of the project?
So I would say, by and large, it depends. If we're talking about hypotheticals. Can I ask a clarifying question? Is there public support as well, or is it all public opposition?
I don't know, Mayor. We didn't.
I would assume every project has some support on both sides, and that there might be, in this particular scenario, there might be more support against it rather than for it.
Okay. So in this case,
or at least more vociferous.
Sure. So I would say if the project is I would say playing by the rules and consistent with all the general plan and the ordinances and everything like that, then it is worth, in my mind, the Planning Commission saying yes to the project. And there will undoubtedly be an appeal to the City Council. And the City Council will have the final word on it. And that's it.
All right, thank you. Next, we're going to go to Michael.
I am here.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I think I have it. Thank you so much. The first thing that jumps out at my mind is the Point View Drive project. Mr. Mackey, I think, was trying to put a hotel and gas station there at the corner of Highway 50 and Jakeway Road, Point View Drive, in that area. And that was one of the most contested projects. And when you have something like this, at the end of the day, first of all, process, you can't say enough about process. Process has to be fair, okay? And then your action needs to be defensible, right? If you're going to deny a project that otherwise looks like there's a right for the applicant to move forward with this project, it's consistent with the general plan, it's not in opposition to any ordinances, it comports with the design guidelines, you're going to have a hard time denying it. If you were to deny the project, you better have a reason to do so. Now, again, as the previous applicant indicated, it's likely going to get appealed. We've had a number of those. And again, at the end of the day, you need to make sure that you have given the council sufficient information and that your action assists the council so it's clear. But beyond that, you can work with the applicant and the community, and you can encourage the applicant to engage the community and even hold workshops. We've done that in the past. Hold a workshop where people can voice their concerns as to why. And always you'll have people who just don't like the project, and okay, we get you don't like the project, but that's not a reason for us to not do the project. So it all comes down to process. It all comes down to thorough understanding of what they can and cannot do, and having a legitimate deliberative approach to it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up is Nicole.
Hey.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I think I can go ahead. So, I mean, I think, it's always important to comply with what's set out in the general plan and the ordinances. Those are the guiding principles. And I think you don't want to go against, no matter how much opposition that is, what the city has laid out as their intent. I think you can do it in a way where you're making people still feel like their voices are being heard in the way in which you explain your rationale for your decision and why it's based on the codes in place, and give very clear rationale and findings so that people understand the reasoning behind the decision. But I don't think it would be fair to an applicant, if they're being compliant, to deny their application. And as previous interviewers have stated, if it's that contentious, it probably will be appealed. And its final stop won't be the planning commission. So I think that's what you need to do. But I think you can do it in a way that you're really making people feel like their voices, voices are being heard, that you're being sensitive to their concerns, while still, being compliant with the intent of what's set out in the general plan.
Okay, thank you. And Barbara? Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I think I have it.
Okay.
We have had issues like that with the public. We could go talk about sourdough, or we could talk about the therapy stores, or we could talk about the ketchup and mustard building ad infinitum. Okay, we're obligated as the planning commission, first of all, to follow the rules and regulations laid out by the zoning codes and the long range plans that the city have made commitments to. Any legalities, we have to conform and meet with that. However, we can reach out to the community, invite them into the commission meetings to discuss and to be able to speak and debate, maybe even having community meetings where in the town hall, where the community is free to come and express their opinion when it's not a planning commission meeting, but they can give their opinion and their viewpoint and their feeling. We're obligated to meet the letter of the law, but we can try and be as flexible as we can with each of the properties or the issues that come before us. But I think it's important for people to be heard. And so as long as we are honest in our agendas and say, this is what we're discussing, this is what we want to do, and we ask the public's feedback, I think we'll be okay. And as it turned out, the last two properties that we had some issues with have turned out to be, well, to be very good. At least sourdough is, if you haven't eaten there. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Karen. All right, Patty is the next question, and you are starting with Michael.
Okay, Michael.
And if in just a second, Barbara, if you could go ahead and mute your screen there, that'd be great.
Thank you.
There we go. All right, Patty, it's all you.
Michael, describe your impression of Placerville's growth policies. I know you've had a lot of experience, so this question, it might be a little bit different for you than the others, but I'm going to go ahead with it anyway. What recommendations do you have to change the policies, if any? And in other words, what is the city doing right and what is the city doing wrong?
City's doing everything right. I couldn't change it. I couldn't change a thing. You know, I believe that the city has, our policies are quite reflective, I think, of, again, going back to the design guidelines, of being sensitive to attempting to maintain our unique aspects historically, and as well as trying to attract and create opportunities for us to grow and to compete and to keep the tax dollars here. And it is a delicate balance. To be perfectly honest, I cannot think of a single policy gap, Patty, or something that I think is a bad policy. I really can't think of that. I think frankly, we're on the right path, and a lot of it is dictated to us by the state and the region. Okay, we're in the broader region. That's always bothered me, that we're lumped in, frankly, with the same region as, say, Roseville. And on more than one occasion, I've said this publicly, I think it has pushed us into a compromise of our unique character that is Placerville, and it never sits well with me. But we often don't have a choice. So I have found the electeds of this community to be very sensitive to that. We comply with what we need to, but we are not reckless. There are some other communities I can think of that I would say, frankly, they're reckless. Placerville is not reckless. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, Dennis.
Nicole, yes.
Okay. Nicole, I'm going to ask you the same question. I'll repeat it. Describe your impressions of Placerville's growth policies. What recommendations do you have to change the policies, if any? In other words, what's the city doing right and what do you think we're doing wrong?
I mean, I think our growth policies are good. I think we want growth, but not, we don't want, I don't know, we don't want to become, some of the big cities or suburbs. I don't think anybody here really sees that as where they want to go. I mean, I guess a couple of areas that I would like to kind of see what happens with them and might be areas of growth would be things like the cannabis industry here. I think that's kind of an interesting, I don't know right now that I would say that, but I think that's sort of an interesting concept of where that might go. I think things like maybe bringing in some tech industries could be an area of growth. Again, if you're looking at places like Placerville Drive. And then, I think the idea has been sort of, what about Smith Flat and what about kind of moving out that way as a region to grow? So I think that's kind of all considered in the policies that we have. But I guess that's what I have to say on that.
Okay, thank you, Nicole.
I think your next person is Barbara.
Okay, Barbara.
Okay, Patty, I'm listening to you.
There you are. Okay. Describe your impressions of Placerville's growth policies. I know you've sat on the commission for 4 years now, but do you have any recommendations in how we should change any of our policies? And if so, in other words, what do you think the city's doing right and what do you think we're doing wrong?
Well, after 44 years of living here, I think the city does the best it can with the people and the economics and the situations presented to them. I firmly believe that all the committees that the city has, not just the planning commission, but and the city council, are caring people who try to do the best they can. I haven't met anyone yet who's using it for self-grandizement or self-advantage. So I think that we need to I do get ticky when people criticize organizations that say people don't care when those people really do. I think you're doing very well by evaluating all the issues. By the way, if you want to put in more housing, I think you're still talking about Woods Road and where the duck pond is. We can put in apartments there. But I think that the city cares very much about the future and the history. There's lots of room for growth over on Placerville Drive. And definitely, since I live in Smith Flat, we need to improve or do something about the grocery outlet and that shopping area over there. I wouldn't change anything any more than what the city's doing. Electing people who care, people who do research and think about before they make decisions, who invite the community to present their positions and take those into consideration. Okay, I think you're doing the best we can. We do need to get a little bit larger historical area because people do come up here for the history and for the, the gold mining and all that. They don't go to Broadway for that. Broadway is where you can grow for your commercial businesses and things like that. And maybe downtown. I'm so glad that the Historical Society is taking over the old post office and the old district attorney's office. So now we have 3 museums downtown and people love museums. So I think this city's doing good with what they have available. You can only deal with what's on your plate. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
And you have Ted next.
Ted? Hi, Ted.
Hi.
Describe your impression of Placerville's growth policies. What recommendations do you have to change the policies, if any? What do you think the city's doing right? And what do you think we're doing wrong?
Yeah, I think for growth, we've done a pretty good job at defining how we develop in a historical district. We've done a good job at setting the general plan and the zoning ordinances for housing density to preserve the character of the city. I will say that I do wish the city would give landowners more latitude when it comes to removing trees on their property. There are ordinances about that, and that makes it difficult for vegetation management when it comes to wildfire control. I mean, just right next to me, I have an acre of wooded land that's residentially zoned that has way too many trees on it. There's significant, I guess, administrative overhead. I can't just go and start taking stuff down on my own. But fire season's coming, and no amount of public hearings is going to stop it.
Okay, thank you, Ted.
Thank you, Patty. And our next council member No, is going to be taking over and starting with Nicole.
Great, thank you. What changes in Placerville would you hope to encourage and discourage? And as a planning commissioner, how would you affect changes in Placerville?
I mean, I think the changes I would hope to encourage are things like I've talked about before, development along Placerville Drive, mixed use, residential as well as commercial, and potentially, you know, various offices, things like that, maybe tech industry. So I think that's something that I would want to encourage. I think it's sort of hard as a planning commissioner to really encourage a lot or discourage a lot, because your objective is to implement the ordinances and the general plan that the city council sets out. You don't really want to be in conflict to that. So I think there's sort of a balance there on what you can kind of actively do in that realm. I certainly wouldn't want to go against, you know, what the city's intent is laid out in their general plan, even if my personal views on what I think should happen in the city are different. So I think there's things with outreach that can be done, just getting, letting people know about meetings, kind of civic engagement, so that they know there's a public hearing and will show up and learn more about what's going on in the city and what our plans are here, what our intents are. I think sometimes you get some of the conflicting or tense issues come down to people kind of not understanding what our general plan says, what our ordinance say, what our zoning codes are. And so they want something different. So I don't know if that answers your question directly, but that's kind of what I have to say on that.
Yes, it does. Thank you, Nicole. Next we go to Barbara. Barbara, what changes in Placerville would you hope to encourage and discourage? And as a planning commissioner, how would you affect changes in Placerville?
Well, as a planning commissioner, I don't think that I have power to affect changes outside of sharing my opinion on any issue before the planning commission or answer any questions that city council members may have. I don't think it's my place to initiate change, but I do believe that as a citizen for 44 years, I have the right to say to Michael, why don't we do this? And then it's up to him whether he takes it further. We've got downtown Placerville. It's obvious that Broadway is a business district, and that then when you go around the corner, I mean, Main Street up into the police department is somewhat of a business district, but Broadway itself is definitely district, and we really should do something with Pacific Street. So we can do some historical things and some modifications, particularly Pacific Street and over by the recreation and parks. I think we need to maintain the historical image. So don't take down the entry sign into the city. I said sign, and work with the public, maybe more. I don't know what we can do on the north side of the freeway. I would hope that we could do something maybe on Canal or Spring, that we can improve. And you know, it is 49 and people go up that way. Maybe we can in some way encourage some businesses or some historical buildings to be emphasized, you know, in that direction, so that people want to go up that way. People come to Placerville to go shopping. People come to Placerville to look at the history. Like I said, I'm so delighted with the old post office and the district attorney's office being taken over by the Historical Society. I think we should reinforce information that we've got a museum here in town and bring people over to Placerville Drive in some way. I'd like to see that happen. But these things take time. Right now we're frozen. Because of the pandemic, there's very, very little we can do. We're probably being curtailed on finances because people aren't spending enough money because they can't get out, and you're probably not getting enough taxes. I just want to keep the city hall and all the personnel working. So what goes on right now is kind of at a standstill. We can't really look to the future until the pandemic is over, or see how we can modify, you know, in some small way. But we're kind of landlocked because of that. Okay.
Thank you, Barbara. We'll move on to Ted. Ted, do you need me to
So-
repeat the question?
I think I've got it. As I mentioned earlier, I think the tree policy could use some revision, but also in a larger perspective, I would love to see projects in the city that encourage more laying of fiber optic lines, for example. I think that gives us more business opportunity, and I don't know what the specifics of that look like, but if there's opportunities, for example, like a dig once policy, where an applicant is trenching for something and there's an opportunity to lay some kind of significant fiber backbone, I think that would be something that's absolutely worth exploring. And I know this is a pipe dream, but I would love to see like an electrical microgrid for Placerville, so that in the summertime our lights come on when we flip the switch, and we're not beholden to PG&E. I'll make no qualms about my distaste for the company. As far as encouraging that sort of thing as a planning commissioner, I think that's certainly limited. But this is how I look at the city, like looking at where infrastructure and capital investments that the private sector can make that are going to pay larger dividends for the city at large. And I think those types of projects are going to change in character over the years. But right now, these are the ones that I really like.
Great, thank you, Ted. And we'll move on to Michael.
And I would ask that you repeat the question, please.
Absolutely. What changes in Placerville would you hope to encourage and discourage as a planning commissioner? How would you affect changes in Placerville?
So I'll answer the second part of the question first, because I think what I've also heard from some of the other fellow applicants here is that seems a little bit dicey. We're representatives of the city, but we're not elected, so we're not out there necessarily doing advocacy. So I have to think about that a little bit, but I'll tell you specifically to the things to do and not do. I would encourage the city anywhere possible to increase lodging opportunities. I would do anything possible to discourage us as being a gateway to somewhere else, like South Lake Tahoe, for example. We need to be a destination. We have the people coming to the wine country. We have the people coming to Apple Hill. We have the people coming to see our history, going out to Sutter's Mill, all those things. Those people need a place to stay. I would also resist anything that would tend to dilute our historical context. We should be maximizing Haintown Creek. Here's a great resource. It runs through the town, through the community. Home Depot did a nice job of rerouting the creek. It is a neglected and underused a resource, an opportunity for us, whether it's dining or whatever it happens to be. So we should be looking to ourselves to what assets do we have that we can in fact maximize. So I think that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, thank you, Councilmember No. I am going to ask a question here, and we'll go ahead and start with Barbara. And that is, let's see, I need to get Barbara up there. And that is, what is your understanding of our housing issues, and how would you consider improving our housing challenges within the scope of your position, of the position of a council, of a commissioner?
Well, first of all, I'm on other organizations where this question comes up. The Commission on Aging, for example, is really worried because there is limited housing for seniors. Okay, we're approximately, what, 10,000, 11,000, and there is very limited rentals or houses to buy. So housing is a big issue as far as I'm concerned. There's not enough houses to buy, and there's not enough lodging for seniors in particular. And then we have another issue with housing in our mobile home parks. They're bought by outside companies, and then they increase the rent, and the elder people that live there can't afford the increased rent. So that is also an issue that is a problem right now. So we do need to find new ways of building. I'm all for building those apartments over by Wilts Road and the pond. We need to build more housing, and we need to make it reasonable. And we need to acknowledge that it is an issue. Not everybody can afford to move into Eschaton or Gold Country or those types of housing also. So we're an aging county. Whether we like it or not, it's out of the 58 counties in California, we're the #1 in aged population. So we need to take that into consideration and help these people. I did drive by all the mobile homes. I didn't really realize there were mobile home parks on Washington. There's about 9 mobile home parks in the city of Placerville. Did you all know that? I didn't. I had to go find them. Okay, and a lot of them need upkeep, and we need more places for our seniors. That's one of the main issues that we have, is to get people to buy property, to improve their property. Maybe even inviting their children to come live with them. I don't know.
Thank you, Barbara. Appreciate that. Next is for Ted. Would you like
could you repeat the question?
You bet. What is your understanding of our housing issues, and how would you consider improving our housing challenges from your position, from what you could do from your position as a commissioner?
I think you'd be hard pressed to find a city in California that will tell you that, there's plentiful housing for the people who want to live there. But it really comes down to economics, right? It's supply and it's demand. When it's too expensive to build more housing, guess what? People are not going to build as much housing. So anything that I could do in capacity as a commissioner to decrease the cost of building, perhaps there are some places where there's newer technology or materials that may not be compatible with our building guidelines. I don't know specifically, but certainly keeping an eye on how you can help people who are going to build housing to save money in doing it, because that's only going to encourage more investment. And also there's the question of infrastructure, right? Because housing and infrastructure, they kind of like chase one another's tail. If you're going to build a neighborhood, you need roads, right? But as you put more houses in a neighborhood, you need to maintain the roads even more. So, that again comes down to economics. What are the fees for all of this infrastructure maintenance, and can you recoup that from property taxes? And. So there's certainly a balance to be made between the cost of the development and what you're going to get out of it, not just in terms of X units of housing, but also what units of infrastructure are you going to get out of that that are going to enable more housing for less. And I would imagine that there could be instances where, as a planning commissioner, there are decisions that would essentially be informed by that concept.
Well, thank you for your answer. I'll move on to Michael Friend.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to start off actually with the homeless, because when we talk about our housing issue, we also have to talk about those that are completely without any type of housing or shelter whatsoever. And I would really encourage the city to work aggressively with the county on trying to figure out approaches to resolve this. And look, very few places have been successful with this, so I realize that it's no easy task whatsoever. But here's an area where we can really, I think, engage the broader community and the county and our local government to try to solve that. Having said that, I think promoting infill projects is a great way to try to work towards accomplishing a housing goal as well as minimizing the sprawl component. I kind of track our RENA, regional housing, I forget RHNA, I forget what it stands for, but I know it by RENA, the allocation that we're responsible for. And I think that staff does a pretty good job at making sure that our inventory, that we're kind of where we need to be, and looking for property that can be zoned for more creative types of housing to go in there. I think the city's in the right place. At the same time, I think we often fall short of a thinking out of the box kind of approach. I was very disappointed. I know there was a concept for a tiny home housing development up by EID, up in some property back there. And I think it got shot down long before it had an opportunity to be explored and pursued. And I think we need to look at something along those lines. We really need to think about things differently and not necessarily in the way that we traditionally do it and have done it before. So that would be my answer, sir.
Thank you very much, Michael. All right, and Nicole, would you like me to repeat the question?
Sure.
All right, let me bring it up here. What is your understanding of our housing issues, and how would you consider improving our housing challenges as from a position of a planning commissioner?
So I think for the first part of that, I think one of sort of our housing challenges is that, we're quite an attractive community to migrate to, which I think is great in a lot of ways. But you've got a lot more, particularly COVID, I think has elevated this with people figuring out that they can work from home. We have a lot of higher income people moving to Placerville, which is then increasing the price of property for single family homes. And so I think, we really need to kind of look at development of housing that will accommodate people who are not in those higher income brackets, so that they are not forced out of the community because they can no longer afford to live here if they're renting. I do think, the homeless population is a complicated issue because we're a small city that doesn't have a budget, and it's kind of, what is the county and what does the state have in terms of funding for that? I mean, I don't think that we can do a lot on that front ourselves, but I guess from the planning commission standpoint, looking at when people come in front of the planning commission with a application to build, multifamily housing, to build low income housing projects, as long as it's compliant with the ordinances and the zoning codes that we have in place and our general plan, approving those projects, even when we may have a lot of opposition to them by community members.
All right, thank you very much, Nicole. All right, we're gonna move on to Councilmember Zaragoza, and he's gonna wrap up our questions, and this will be the last one. So way you go. Thank you, Michael.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So 3 out of the 4 of you have served on this committee before, so you know that y'all meet on the first and third Tuesdays when we have meetings. But my question for the group then is this: how much time? One, do you have the time commitment to sit on this board? And then 2, how much time do you plan on investing into this? As we know, it's not just the meeting itself, but really the time to prepare. And then lastly, if you can fit it into our 3 minutes, if you have any final comments that you would like to say that you didn't touch on in your previous answers. And we will start, I believe, with Ted.
All right, last one. So yes, I have the time to invest in this. I work from home. I don't have to burn time commuting. I feel very fortunate for that. And the amount of time I'll spend on it is the amount that I need to fairly understand every project that's coming. I mean, there's an ebb and flow to it. I mean, sometimes there are meetings get canceled because there's no business, and sometimes, you know, there's a lot to consider, and the meeting goes on for 4 hours. But that's just sort of the nature of public service. So I'm more than willing to adapt my schedule accordingly so that I can be prepared for every meeting and obviously attend every meeting. As far as final comments go, I would just like to take a chance to express my gratitude to the city council and to the staff of the city. I know this planning all this stuff with video conferencing is certainly not easy. You know, there's a host of tech issues, but I'm very glad that we're getting through it. And I just want to say thank you all for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ted. Michael.
Thank you very much for the question. Yeah, the time commitment, of course, while it varies from month to month and from project to project, I've never found it to be a concern or an issue or a burden. Personally, I have begun to increase the amount of time that I am spending off agenda item. There are things happening at the national, state, regional, and county levels that all of a sudden are seeming to relate to me and to things that may come before Planning Commission. So I'm doing a lot more studying and being a little bit more aware of what's going on and what changes might be coming down the pike. And I think they could be changes that might actually challenge us, particularly in maintenance of our historic districts and historic character. But overall, as a time commitment, it's not burdensome at all. I have to be honest, as reflected in my answers and things tonight. One question was, what is the relationship between a planning commissioner and the applicant? And I was pretty adamant that it should be a neutral, neither an advocate nor an adversary. And I have to admit that in my early days as a planning commissioner, and I think this is something you learn over time, it's one of the things that I actually bring to the table, I think, is the skill and experience. I remember the burger and sushi place where the Thai restaurant is now at the corner of Broadway and Mosquito, Broadway and Main. And they had an issue to do with the sign, and the sign ordinance was new, and those people were so nice, and their business was struggling. And so as a planning commissioner, I was probably there more than I should have been in retrospect. And then one thing that the city pursued that I really didn't like, and I think Jerry Brown killed it, and that was the whole redevelopment agency process. And I can't remember the exact details, but it really kind of bothered me. But on balance, I look forward to the opportunity to continue serving. I've enjoyed it immensely and hope I have brought value to the council and to the citizens of the city. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, Nicole, you are next.
Yeah, so for me, obviously I'm the one that hasn't served on before, but I am a consultant and I have a lot of flexibility kind of in my work. I also work from home and a part owner of my company. So I do have a lot of ability to work my schedule as I need to and make the time that I need to in order to spend whatever it takes on any given meeting and agenda. I can say that, you know, for the last 2 years, I've read through in detail every single planning commission and every city council meeting. I sit on them. I watch you guys. I'm sure you guys probably get my comments. So, I mean, I do pay a lot of attention already just as a member of the public as to the details. I'm a really detail-oriented person, kind of have a very scientific mindset where I want to look at all the data. I want to look at, you know, the exact language in every code and what the general plan says, what the development guide says. I've read all those documents. So I do think, you know, I'll make the time that I need to do it. And thank you for the opportunity to interview. It's nice to get a chance to talk to all of you. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Nicole. And then Barbara, you get to wrap it up.
Wrap it up. There we go. And I can wrap it up. I love this town. I probably spent more time here than I ever did where I was growing up. But sadly, all the kids left Placerville and moved down south because there's nothing to do here. So part of what my goal is to hopefully help create jobs so that there is something to do here so the kids don't leave. I do my research on the packets that are given to me. I also drive up and down the city streets because there's nobody for me to I'm a gray-haired old lady with cats, so I'm free to do that. And I see new things. Did you know that Durango's has changed its name and changed ownership? If you don't, when's the last time you went down Reservoir Street or Course Alley? So I try to also keep up with those changes that are in the city, or that they're paving right now, Mosquito Road, and it's shut down. So but I'm looking forward to the new museums in the old post office and the district attorneys, as well as keeping the one going over by the fairgrounds. I have the time. Okay, really, how much time do I have to commit to the Planning Commission? 24/7. Okay, I'm a historian. And I've read Bev Cola's history of Placerville and the Scioli books, as Michael has, on the history of Placerville, so that I know the foundation and how we got to where we are. And I'd like to stay on and use my history and my love of my knowledge of planning and inspection and zoning and my love for history to keep doing the best I can for. We represent the city council. I really want to do the best I can for the citizens of Placerville and to help advise and guide the city council so they too can make the best decisions for the citizens of Placerville. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
And thank you, Councilmember Saragosa. I truly appreciate the effort and the time that all the applicants have put into answering the questions and the thoughtfulness in which you did, and surely the care that you have expressed for our community, and that's all those are exactly what we're looking for in at least that's what I'm looking for. I assume most everybody on this council wants you to care about our city as well, and I can speak for all of us that we truly do appreciate that. And I know that on many commissions and committees that we have, that is a quality that we look for. At this time, what our process is going to be is we will all we'll close off our screens. Is there any final comments or questions? Yes.
Are we going to open it to public comment?
That is a great question, and the answer is yes. So I'm not watching my agenda. I'm thinking about this here. It's heavy on my mind thinking about how to proceed here. So yes, let's go with. We are going to open it up for public comment. Anybody that would like to comment on the proceedings and anything to do with this regarding this Planning Commission interview process, and with regards to the applicants or this interview process, that's strictly what the public comments for at this time. And at this time, we'd like to open it up. And Regina, could you help us out there, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you'd like to share a comment, please use the raise hand option at the bottom of your screen and I will call upon you. You can voluntarily give your name for the record, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. We will start with Ruth Michaelson. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello. I'm trying to tell my family to be quiet, but they're kind of making noise in the background. This was a great process. I've never sat through and listened to one of these interview panels, and I thought it was so professionally done. I thought all the questions were excellent, and I think you have a wonderful panel of 4 to choose from. I don't envy your having to select 2 out of the 4 because they all have their strengths. And I think you really have gathered a good group together here. The one thing that stood out for me that I just wanted to mention, being a constituent being a downtown merchant, and you probably, at least 2 out of the 4 of you know that I call in and make comments about things. That's of the 4 applicants. The others of you on city council, of course, know that I call in as well. What I really took note of, because I know some very contentious issues have come before the Planning Commission. They were mentioned today. I don't need to go over those. And some of those were appealed and went to city council. And during this year of Zoom, you've had much more involvement with the citizenry because of the advent of Zoom with COVID. We can call in, and it's much more convenient than coming into meetings and sitting for a couple of hours waiting for your item to come up. And what I really didn't hear today a whole lot of was the consideration for the constituent. I heard a lot about the consideration of the council, the general plan, the zoning, the ordinances, and the development guide. And I understand all of that. Of course, those are very, very important. But to me, it seems like a 3-pronged process that you have to be concerned for the applicant, be concerned for city council, and be concerned for constituents while you're using all of those guiding documents that were discussed. And what I've felt has been lacking while I've been involved with these meetings is a true compassion towards the constituent. Certainly it can't always go in the direction of the constituent. I get that. You win some, you lose some. But I really haven't heard from this body very much compassion about how much this impacts our livelihoods and our lives. And even if it's not going to go the way of the constituents, I'd like to hear more compassion towards the impact. And I was very impressed by one particular applicant who spoke to that, and that was Nicole Gottberg, who spoke to that. And I really appreciate that she got that. I also heard Barbara Raines make comment about that as well. So that's really what I wanted to say. And thank you very much for this process and letting us all witness it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ruth.
Okay, we'll move to Holden Green. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello, I'm Holden Green. I live in the area, and I first wanted to say, great job, Nicole. Secondly, I was really impressed by some of the things that I believe his name is Theodore or Ted said in regards to I think development in general, particularly like high-speed fiber and independent from PG&E and also housing. So I think that's really in line with how I tend to think about these things. So thank you guys for this.
Thank you very much for calling in, Holden. All right.
All right, shall we just take all right, I was going to say last call, but we've got Jen C. Go ahead and unmute.
Hi there.
Hello,
Sorry,
Jen.
I'm beeping here. Hold on. So I want to echo you have 4 great candidates, and I really hope that no matter, how the outcome is, that all 4 of them will be involved. And, I see them all having skills that could serve in, special advisor capacities. But I guess I just wanted to say that, on the ordinances and the plan, because I heard a lot about compliance, but I do want to say I feel like there's work that we've daylighted, love that verb, but that has come to the surface, that some of the ordinances and some aspects of the plan, there's some inconsistencies, there's some old things that have carried over that may not have been looked at, carefully enough. And so I think there's work there. Also want to just remind folks that this Planning Commission is literally tasked with everything that the Historical Advisory Committee was tasked with. And it's actually a lot if you read what that resolution says and what those responsibilities are. And with that, I'll just say, I hope that, the commission and the council will look at, there's a document that's something about rehabilitation, and it has the word secretary, but it doesn't seem to be the Secretary of the Interior's standards. And so just checking your sources and what are we using for guidance and standards for our historical resources. I really feel like, you know, with a lot of these things, it's kind of a now or never. We're really at a tipping point. I appreciate historic character, but we also have to use that word resource and, you know, historic resource. And one of the things about that advisory committee that has passed to the Planning Commission has to do with the historic resource inventory and, you know, keeping an eye on that. Is it current? I mean, the last inventory was in the 80s. And so it doesn't include buildings like the 1939 post office because it wasn't 50 years old when the inventory was done. So there's a lot of work there. I appreciate the folks that mentioned fire issues in various ways. And I do think evacuation planning, not only and then there's the vegetation management piece, but remember the building materials and all the fire-wise building aspects. Building and planning is so tied to fire-wise ideas. And so I think there's a lot of work there as well. And then I do want to say that historic district, it's true that we don't have an ordinance. We do not have an ordinance designating a downtown historic district. Our district is not on the California register. It's not on the national register, but that doesn't mean it's not a district. A district is a concentration of historical resources that are connected. And we certainly have a district, and we have a map that was proposed in 2012. And, you know, 9 years later, there hasn't been much, you know, revisiting of the map. And now is really the time to look at this historic district that we've been, you know, aware of and even went to the point of making a map that long ago. So thank you for the opportunity. I'm excited about these candidates and the process, and I hope everyone will stay very involved.
All right, we'll take public comment from caller 857. Go ahead.
Good evening, City Council.
Good evening, Michael.
Hey, I just want to highly commend you all for such a professional interview. You really did a fantastic job. I love the way it worked, the questions. You should be commended for this interview process. Kudos. I just had a thought for a future question to add to the roster. What if a business was to bring in a lot of high paid employees, and that would then trigger housing prices going up 25%? Is that something that would be a potential question? Because it would have ramifications, but it's not really written into ordinances and zoning and what have you. But that's something to consider because the world is changing. It's musical chairs right now. But just again, commend you all. Very professional interview process, and you have a tough decision ahead of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, Mr. Mayor, it doesn't appear to be any further public comment.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Connell. Now we are going to move into our process where we will look at voting. Is there any other comments by or any additional questions that you have or follow-up questions for any of the applicants at this time? All right. Seeing none, just want to make sure we had all of our questions, answers that was necessary. So at this time, we're not going to adjourn, but we're going to go to our emails, and we're going to submit the top 2 picks that we would like to vote for. And Ms. O'Connell and our City Manager Clea Morris will review those and then report out shortly as to the results. And we're going to do that right now. So we are going to mute our screens and do that typing, and we'll show back up here in just a minute. Thank you.
All right, so we have tallied the votes, and I'd like to announce that we have two candidates that did make the majority vote. There are 5 votes for Nicole Gottberg, and there are 3 votes for Michael Friend. And I'll just go ahead and announce who voted for who. We have Councilmember Zaragoza voted for Nicole Gottberg and Michael Friend. Councilmember Borelli voted for Nicole Gottberg and Michael Friend. Councilmember No voted for Nicole Gottberg and Ted Juba. And Vice Mayor Taylor voted for Nicole Gottberg and Michael Friend. And Mayor Thomas voted for Nicole Gottberg and Ted Juba. So I congratulate you, Nicole and Michael. I will give you your oath of office prior to your first meeting on the Planning Commission. So Mr. Mayor, I hand it back to you.
All right. I want to thank all of the applicants, those who made it and those that didn't to come in. I want to especially thank Barbara Raines for her years of service and her love and care for our community. And I want to welcome Nicole Gottberg to the Placerville Planning Commission. And I would like to offer if any of the applicants would like to have any words before we sign off here.
I would like to say thank you for allowing me to serve. I enjoyed being on the Planning Commission. I learned an awful lot, and I think you made an excellent choice in the candidates that you chose.
Thank you very much, Barbara. I appreciate that.
Barbara, you're going to be missed. I'm going to miss you.
You can always call me and ask my opinion. You know that's free.
Oh, I plan to.
All right.
I'd also like to express my gratitude and look forward to seeing what the new Placerville Planning Commission does. So thank you again.
Thank you, Ted. Appreciate the comments.
Yeah, and I would just like to say I'm very excited to serve on the commission, and I'm looking forward to representing the city.
Welcome.
Yes, City Manager, please.
Hey, Mayor, if I could, please, I just throw out to Barbara and Theodore, we do have a couple of commissions that are open, or committees that are open right now. Our Economic Advisory Committee. I'll just mention we have a significant fiber optics project we're trying to put together right now. I heard Ted, your comments on that. So I'll just throw that out. That's open until, Regina, can you help me out when those are closed? I think we have another, the 8th.
Yes, they are open until next Tuesday, March 9th. And you can find the applications on the city website. And yeah, March 9th at 5 p.m.
So yeah, both Recreation and Parks and Peak Economic Advisory Committee have those commissions are open right now. There's a couple of slots that are open for those. So I just want to put that plus in while I'm there. So
thank you, Barbara. Yes,
I was given a very large box of information and subdividers as soon as I joined the Planning Commission. I'm assuming you guys would like that back so you can give it to Nicole so that it doesn't have to be replicated by Regina.
we would appreciate that, Barbara, if we can, and we can either you can bring it by or we can arrange to come and pick it up too if that works easiest for you. So
we'll just have Andrew or Pierre combined pick it up.
We'll do. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. And I'd like to second Cleve's comments on the idea of the peak. I think it's a great opportunity to affect change in all sorts of areas of the city and look at ways to improve based on our future going forward on housing, on recreation, on our TOT tax on our hotels, and the infrastructure when it comes to bringing new and different businesses in and what it takes to bring them in. As you talked about the broadband, I think that is a hot topic that they are working on, and anybody that can help move that needle, I think would be a hero in my eyes. So With that, I'm gonna turn it over to Patty if she had a question or comments. Yes.
I'm gonna, and you seconded, but so now I'm gonna third Cleve's comments and say the very same thing. I think both of these folks show their enthusiasm and they're caring for the city, and I would love to have them apply for the other commissions and keep them active, with their ideas and everything towards our city.
I'll call Regina tomorrow to find out exactly what positions are open and where. I also would like to say, and I don't have any problem saying this in a public arena, Nicole, please feel free to call me. If you have any questions, interest, what went on before, what do you do, how do you do it, who's who, where are the issues or problems, just want coffee and want to chat with a little old gray-haired lady with cats.
All right. Thank you so much, Barbara, for your comments. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up and express once again, my appreciation for everybody here and for taking their time this evening, as well as those people that called in and shared their thoughts on this process. I'm sure the new commissioners going forward will take those to heart and as they go. So for that, at this time, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting and wish you all a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye.